My name is Ruben, CEO of EMEA APAC, and I'm here today, as always, together
with me, Tim van Hattem,
Yes.
EVP of Enterprise here at Tana Commerce. Good to see you again, Ruben.
Likewise, man. The next episode is there. What are we going to talk about?
We are going to dive into the topic of efficiency in sales teams and how sales teams can be or become more efficient. That's a topic we come across very, very often when speaking to prospects and customers. One of our customers, global manufacturer of chemical products, and when they came to us, their initial goal wasn't necessarily to sell more. They just wanted to service their customers more online. Not just because that creates a better customer experience, but mainly because their sales team was just overwhelmed and overloaded with the amount of questions they got in regards to what's the status of my order, where's my shipment, I want to pay my invoice, or what's my order history, what did I order, 3 months ago.
Yeah.
Right. So all those questions are important questions, naturally, because the customer asks those, and every question the customer asks is important. But at the same time, it just eats time away from your commercial teams, from your sales teams, to do what they're actually supposed to do, namely selling.
Or what was for them really the problem with the inefficiencies?
The problem was that their sales team was really occupied with doing all kinds of customer support that wasn't necessarily generating revenue. So ultimately, it's always about customer satisfaction and revenue, right? Those two things are, for sales teams, are the most important thing. So that's what it typically boils down to.
Maybe a seller would say, when we would discuss this topic, like, is it really inefficient if I'm answering a question of my customer? I'm helping them out.
Exactly.
I'm giving them advice on how we can help them in the best way, or how we can fulfill their needs. So how do you look at that? Is that really inefficient?
I think it's important. If you are a seller, you're supposed to sell. At the same time, obviously, you also want to be the go-to for your customer, or you want to be supportive, and you want to be making sure that you help the customer out when he needs you. But if you look at it from a sales perspective, or through a sales lens, then it's not the most efficient way to sell. Again, there's other ways.
Well, maybe
obviously.
A seller would say, look, when I answer this question, I help my customer out in this case, then it's helping me to do the sale, because maybe in this case on the same day or one day after the order comes in. And the question is, if I wouldn't have given the answer, if I wouldn't have helped out in this case, then maybe the purchase wasn't made.
That is a good point, and it is something that we get back quite a bit from
exactly
customers and prospects, right? So if you say,
that's why I bring it up.
Of course, of course you do. If you are, I don't know, if you're taking orders, or if you are helping out your customer figuring out what his invoice looked like, how much value are you then adding to your customer as well? The question is if you have more time as a seller to actively engage with your customer, better understand their needs, or their business, or their organization, rather than keying in orders for them, right? Would that not improve the relationship rather than diminish it? I think it definitely helps getting a better relationship.
I think e-commerce as a solution, we need to be careful, because in a lot of cases it didn't maybe make the processes and the sales teams in this case more efficient.
E-commerce is not like a silver bullet that solves everything, of course, right? No, exactly. Ultimately, it's just another platform or environment to service your customers. That requires change, and that requires adoption, ultimately to become more efficient. If you buy as a consumer, it's also more convenient to be able to check to track your orders, or to just look at what you have ordered previously, or when exactly you ordered it, right? So that's no different in the B2B space. Yes, it is change if this is a first-time introduction of e-commerce, but ultimately it will definitely lead to more efficiency.
In my own experience, in many cases, when you talk about efficiency and you want to quantify it, or you want to discuss with them, okay, what does this mean for your organization? then in many cases they don't have these KPIs top of mind. And in many cases they don't track these KPIs properly.
They may not have those top of mind, but what they do know is, well, if they come to us with this question, they do know that they're spending too much time on certain tasks, right? So then the question is, how much time do you spend, and how much time do you think you should be spending on those tasks? There's two options. Either you make sure your customers have less questions, or you service them elsewhere, online, for instance.
Okay. So when we would try to translate this into some KPIs or suggestions, and maybe listeners have suggestions as well, let us know. The number of requests coming in to companies, right? So customer requests on anything. You say the time spent per request or the time spent per customer. Correct. I would say obvious one to add is cost of sale, right? So looking at the total costs that companies put into their sales force and sales teams and compare that to the returns.
Customer that is downloading an invoice online is one customer less calling in to request that invoice, right? So you could look at both. You could look at both and see how those two are balanced.
But when you look at those numbers, offline sales, I guess, and online sales, but also adoption in general of your online platform, right? Is what you're referring to. Then when you look at
not just sales, right? So not just the transaction. So if you and this is something that not all customers or companies are tracking, of course, but if you know, so how many of our customer support tickets, if you have a ticketing system or customer support calls, how many of those are about invoicing, for instance, right? If you say, well, that's 20% is invoicing, that's X hundred calls a month or X thousand, I don't know, right? So how can you decrease that number? Well, one way is to look at, so how many of those can we cover online, right? And then those two will be balancing, or the balance will shift rather.
I was talking a couple of weeks ago to a company, and they are a provider of luxury consumer goods. And it is also contained a B2B scenario because they were selling this into retailers and wholesalers and other, let's say, B2B buyers. The commercial manager was actually mentioning for him efficiency means that currently he has sales and customer service teams. And that runs fine, but they are rapidly scaling up the business. He foresees, of course, problems in terms of attracting the right personnel and also in time attracting the personnel to help support and grow that business, to help scale their business. So for him, efficiency is or means when we can scale the business, when we can grow the way we want to grow with the current staff, with the current team, right? Yeah. So then automatically you become more efficient. And for that, of course, things need to happen.
If I remember correctly, it was Dave from Meiten that we had as a guest on our podcast early April. He mentioned that he freed up his sales team to do more sales and to add more value. And as bycatch, he said that his team enjoyed their jobs more than before. So
yes. Yeah, it's a good example. Last thing, Tim, on the efficiency KPIs maybe. I think it's also good to not only look at the commercial costs, so to speak. When you talk about efficiency of sales teams, it's about, okay, what kind of costs do we make on the commercial side and what are the returns? But sometimes reorganizing commercial processes also have positive efficiency gains on, for example, the logistics side. Talk about return order management. This is also on the commercial side, right? It's existing customers sending back goods. When you are able to make changes on the commercial side there that help the customer and the company itself to organize that in a more simple way, it also has a positive effect on the logistics side, meaning maybe less flows of returned goods, or maybe more efficient processes on the logistics side. So my suggestion or tip would be to not only look at the commercial cost side, but also when you look at efficiency on the commercial side, to also take into account other processes like logistics and see what the effects are there, because otherwise you narrow too much on the commercial side